Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is about drafting and sewing up a wrap dress. I had the idea of an easy to wear wrap dress for the summer months, one that has a nice flow in the skirt and sleeve that are a bit more open and not a set-in sleeve. The sleeve part was the one that took me the longest to figure out, and I ended up constructing a saddle sleeve, but more on that later. As with every drafting project, it starts with tracing my bodice block pieces. My back block has 2 waist darts and 1 in the shoulder. The first step is to widen the armhole for the saddle sleeve and give some more room in the side seams. I drew a horizontal line to my dart ending and cut there as well as one side of the dart. My shoulder dart is relatively small and it will close up completely in the first step. You are also deepening the armhole. I went with 3 cm for this project and I marked it from my old arm curve. Next up, you are using 2/3 of the 3 cm to add to your back side seam. With the new side seam finished, I shaped my new armhole. I also wanted a slightly lower neckline for this project and shaped the new one as well. Drawing the saddle line into your pattern piece is more eyeballing on what kind of curve you would like. I first sketched it with my pencil and then redrew it with a ballpoint pen. This finished up the back pattern piece and I went ahead and cut along the saddle line. The leftover piece will be used later to form the sleeve pattern. The only things left on my draft were the details on the measurements for my waistline. The dress connects to the skirt piece about 5 cm under my waist. I will need this measurement later to see how much I have to cut from my skirt pattern. Next up is the front piece. Here as well you have to increase the armhole area. This time I drew a cut line to the apex where my shoulder dart sits. I opened up the armhole and closed only a little bit of my shoulder darts, since this one is slightly bigger than the one in the back. After filling the gap, I cut into my waist dart to close my shoulder dart completely. I lowered the armhole by 3 cm as well and used 1/3 of it to add to my side seam. Then I traced the lower part of my bodice block about 5 cm under my waist. After that I shaped my new armhole. Next step is the front panel extension to wrap the dress. I checked my book on how to do it best and extended the waistline by 10 cm. At the end of this overlapping area would sit my strap to tie my dress. From there I drew the new neckline for my front piece and marked the point where my saddle sleeve should start. Similar to the back piece, I sketched a shape based on my liking. I've added the seam allowance and angled the front piece where the strap for wrapping the dress would attach. I used my Zadie jumpsuit as an inspiration since I prefer this wrapping method over the flimsy tie the strap on one side method that all the other patterns are using. With that, the front was finished and I cut along the saddle line. Last step in the drafting stage was the sleeve pattern. The sleeve is constructed with the 2 cutout pieces from the front and the back. I cut the excess paper at the shoulder seam on the front piece and sticked both pieces along the shoulder together. In the book they say to space them apart and I did it by 1 cm, but in hindsight I think for this project it would not have been necessary. On a new piece of paper I traced the saddle lines until the markings of the sleeve, back and front points. At this point you cut your piece and rotate it by 180 degrees. Then continue tracing along the edge. This part is a bit messy since you have pattern pieces that are fragile, but once you trace everything to a new sheet of paper it gets better. The only thing left to finish the sleeve were the side seams and a hemline. At this point, I made a mock-up of the first draft and checked how I liked the fit. It was not too bad, but I noticed a little bit of a gaping in the front piece. I went back to my draft and took a bit of volume out where I pinned fabric away. Then I redrew the neckline. The sleeves as well were a little bit too voluminous, and I removed some fabric here as well with the same method. After preparing my drafts with seam allowances, I was ready to cut into my fabric. I chose to use my black and white viscose fabric that I got from a trip to Greece last year. It is a slightly thicker viscose fabric which has a very nice drape. The only issue was I only bought about 2 meters of fabric, and I wanted a longer half circle skirt as a lower part. The Tetris game was on to make it happen, so I decided to cut out my bodice pieces first and sew them up. I started sewing all the darts in my bodice piece before joining the side seams. The left side seam of the bodice has an opening for the strap. After finishing the bodice, I started my pattern Tetris. First I cut out my sleeves to see how much fabric would be left. Laying the back skirt piece on the fabric gave me a good indicator on how much fabric would be left and where I could place my pattern pieces. While having everything on the fabric, I marked where I would lower the waistline based on my longer bodice. One front piece had a little bit fabric missing at the side seam, but I knew I might shorten the dress in the end, or I could easily sew some leftover fabric scraps into that corner. Back on the sewing machine, I sewed the saddle sleeve into the bodice. While I cut out the rest of the pieces, I also cut out the facings, pocket pieces and the straps from some black viscose fabric and sewed the straps. Even though I'm not a big fan of finishing the neckline with a facing, I choose it for this project. First I pinned only parts of the front facing and the straps in place and sewed it together. I then pinned the back and sleeve facings into place and sewed the shoulder seams to the front. I noticed my fabric must have moved while cutting out the pieces. Some seams didn't line up perfectly. I used the facing to form the neckline and cut the excess fabric away. The only thing left for the bodice was to turn the triangular piece with the strap out. Then it was time to start sewing the skirt part. Before sewing the side seams, I sewed my pockets. Then I finished the front pieces with pressing the edges over twice. To have a perfect finish on the front, I started pinning the skirt in place from the back piece. With this I made sure my front edge of the bodice aligns with the skirt, otherwise I could have ironed the edge again, but everything worked out fine. After I put the dress on, I noticed that one front had a little bit too much room at the saddle sleeve seam. Or maybe my body is just a little bit more shallower on this side. I pinned the excess fabric away and altered the seam for a better fit. The same alteration were applied then to the facing piece. With the dress almost finished, it was time to get out the iron and give the facing a good press. Then I top stitched the facing and the front skirts. I did the facing first and then ventured to the skirt parts. After a few days of letting the dress hang, I finished the sleeves and hem. Both sleeve and hem seams were finished by turning the seam over twice. As always, I first stitched a little guideline on the machine and then pressed everything up. When I tried it on, I went with the option of shortening the dress by the amount that was missing in one side seam. Here's my finished wrap dress with the saddle sleeve. I'm absolutely happy with how the dress turned out. For a moment I thought about a wrap dress with a straight skirt, but the fabric is just so perfect for a flowy half circle skirt. With the straps that thread through the opening in the side, it should also be very secure to not untie itself by accident, or in general becomes too loose. It also gives you just a better way to get the fit of the dress to your liking. I hope this dress will be a good companion for the upcoming heat waves. It certainly was on my stroll through the park the other day. I hope you enjoyed my dress project, and if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Happy crafting and take care. Bye bye!